Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for waiting. I would like to begin the next part of the program. The presentations in this section were publicly posted, and they were selected from the program committee. The first speaker is Mr. Hiroaki Iwase. Upon graduation from the Graduate School of Tohoku University, he was engaged in the key value store Rome in Ruby in an IT company, and in 2019 he joined Bandai Namco Studio, and at present he is a member of the team developing game titles for smartphones by using Ruby on Rails as a game engineer. Today, he's going to speak under the theme of Bandai Namco Studio's use of Ruby in smartphone titles and re-examination of infrastructure following the abolition of AWS Opsworks. Now I give you Mr. Iwase, please. Thank you very much. I am Iwase with Bandai Namco Studio. Today I'd like to speak about how the Ruby is used in our company and also some infrastructure concerning the abolition of Opsworks. Now, let me begin with self-introduction. Once again, I am Hiroaki Iwase. I am a server engineer at Bandai Namco Studio. And in 2014 RubyWorld conference, I had a chance to speak. On that occasion, I spoke about KVS ROM made in Ruby and also Gladiator, the management tool for ROM made on Rails. And so it's been 9 years since then, and I'm so honored to be back on the stage again in a Ruby conference. The theme I'd like to speak about today is how Ruby is used in our studio, but let me begin with what we are doing in Bandai Namco Studio. As shown in the slide, we create games. For instance, titles for smartphones, which I'm going to give as an example, and also titles for consumer home games and also arcade games. And the company recently launched a new label called GA Studio. I belong to a team of development and operation of smartphone titles, and I am now in charge of operating a titles called Tales series called Tales of the Race as a smartphone title, and I'd like to give an example of Tales of the Race, which I would like to shorten to Race today. Now, how extensively is Ruby used in our company? In our studio, besides Race, we have several smartphone titles in development and also in operation. On server side and backend, mostly we use either Ruby or Go. The thing is somewhat different for titles which are now in development pipeline, but half of the titles which are in operation, we use Ruby. Then, actually, where in Race do we use Ruby? Basically, as I mentioned a minute ago, it is used on the server side and backend. The main area is the API server, and also we use Ruby on Rails to implement an API server which communicates with the client side and the game client, which is Unity in our case. And second area is the back office tool for game. We implement web applications for users' data management and setting of the game itself with Rails. And besides API server, we use asynchronous processing servers. And things are different from title to title, but for Race, we use gems for rescue and rescue scheduler for implementation. And in our studio, we make gems for commonly used functions for different titles, and they are not made public, and basically they have been in-house use, but basic functions can be used across titles, and the titles used and operated in Ruby, those gems are utilized. And for different tools, we used Ruby for writing a simple script for organizing the data and processing the data required for games. This is the infrastructure structure which moves the various servers I mentioned. As you can see, we use AWS for infrastructure. In specific, we use AWS Opsworks. We will come back to this topic again later. So for the time being, let me move on. Now, Opsworks. I mentioned this all of a sudden, and I'm sure that there are many non-engineers in this conference today. So please allow me to go through very quickly what Opsworks and Chef are all about. Opsworks is a configuration management service provided by AWS. It uses configuration management tools such as Chef, and it automates server instance setting and the deployment of applications as provided by AWS. Now on Chef. Chef is a configuration management tool that automates server configuration management. Chef can be used alone, standalone, but as I mentioned earlier, Opsworks provides Chef's system, so we use Chef from Opsworks. Now Chef. Recipes, setting and configuration files are written in Ruby, so recipe is more or less a familiar system for Rubyists. Then automation. What are being automated? Various processings are automated already, and this is just an example. And all of those are managed by Chef's recipe, so basically they are written in Ruby. Now back on this configuration diagram. This is called the production stacks. The stacks for real environment. Opsworks also has layers underneath, and in our studio we have a layer for each different server function. It's difficult to see, but for instance, application service layer and game management server layers, among others. For other elements and components, I will not go through in detail for today, but basically all of those are managed by AWS infrastructure services. We have application load balancer, and data uses a database system called Aurora, and some sessions and cache and asynchronous processing queues are done with the Elastic Cache. And access log and error log and data for KPI are sent to S3 for further data processing of different kinds. So for infrastructure, configuration and management are automated and coded. So today, to some extent, application engineer is able to manage infrastructure too. In Bandai Namco Studio, in operating titles, on that stage, infrastructure engineers provide the minimum support, and basically application engineers operate infrastructure. The big advantage is that both application side and infrastructure side are written in the same language. As a cloud service is now used, so it is no longer necessary to procure on-premise server or set the initial settings at the data center, but still all this requires some learning cost. So in that sense, the infrastructure written in the same language Ruby, as is the case with application, is a big advantage. And also, in hiring engineers, when we hire application engineers who can write in Ruby, they can also look after infrastructure. So it's a great advantage that application and infrastructure side are written in the same language, Ruby. Now, AWS Opsworks stacks. It is going to be out of service. It's going to be abolished in May the 26th next year. Well, the ideal was to start building from zero, but the titles already in operation due to cost balance and also there might be some changes required in operation. And so in certain cases, not easy to rebuild from zero, from scratch. There could be various ways for automation besides Chef, but if possible, we'd like to continue to use Chef so that the method operation wouldn't change very much, and we'll be able to continue to use the Ruby systems, which have proven to be quite effective. Then what can we do? Now the migration. Regarding this, AWS recommends AWS Systems Manager, SSM, to shift from AWS Opsworks, and they prepare scripts already. But for various reasons, such scripts are not used very much according to AWS, and currently in cooperation with AWS, we are trying to verify how we can manage by using script and SSM. Now, what is SSM to start with? In a sense, this is a safe end-to-end management solution for hybrid cloud environments. So it provides various management solutions that integrate and collaborate with various AWS services, and it provides various services and functions as shown in this slide. Chefs can be used on SSM, as is the case with Opsworks, so we don't need to construct infrastructure from the very beginning. So we can migrate Chef environment to SSM at a low cost, and we are able to use Ruby recipes in the new infrastructure environment. And now for migration, we use scripts in Python. It would have been perfect if the scripts were written in Ruby, but unfortunately they were written in Python. Of course, there are various preparatory stages we need to go through, but actually this is the command to complete the migration, and layer ID of Opsworks. This is not the ID of stacks, but rather the layer ID, and that needs to be identified and then specify what information is required for migration. An instant family and size need to be set appropriately based upon the instance information on Opsworks, and the template is to be generated on the cloud formation, and then a clone of applications can be finished down to provisioning. For Chef execution, there is a documents, a series of functions in SSM, and AWS apply Chef recipe is a document in this regard. And also, you can read run command among others, but documents are called up and Chef is then executed. So this is too busy, but this is AWS apply Chef recipe. And now, with the use of a Chef recipe, I mentioned that various processings are automated. But if the eigenvalue for each environment is written to recipe, that can be used only for that particular environment. So this is separated in the form of JSON file from recipes on the Opsworks on the web console. Basically, directly JSON is managed, but on SSM, a JSON file is put out as a file in S3. When executing the migration script without option, such a bucket with such a name is prepared, and the very end is account ID for AWS, and inside the bucket, a JSON file is output. And once the setting is done, custom JSON for each layer, that is output also. Now, instance management function we used on Opsworks, and on SSM it's going to be managed under auto scaling group. Opsworks provide time-based and load-based functions. Although there are some differences, SM provide a dynamic scaling policy and a scheduled scaling policy. Predictive scaling policy doesn't exist with the Opsworks. So the past access volume is used to predict the future access number, and accordingly instance number are adjusted. And there are some points we need to bear in mind for in verification. First, as I mentioned, for the migration script, the migration is not for stack but for a layer. The script is assuming one stack, one layer configuration. So for multiple layers, migration script needs to be executed for each layer. Now, shift execution time. Custom AMI, if something like that is prepared, then we need to consider the time required for ASG launch. And recipe meta file, and this must be metadata Ruby and not metadata JSON. Depending upon the timing of making a recipe, there were both JSON and Ruby. And metadata.json, the script execution itself can be done, but there could be an error. And also there are some patterns for chef execution failures, and this was also acknowledged by AWS, and they are planning to fix. A few days ago when I checked again, the fix, they might have already been fixed. There might be some errors still, but all of the problems might have been fixed already. This is the summary. I'm already spent 15 minutes. Now, SSM migration script has not been well used. So I hope that my talk has served as a kind of information for those of you who haven't used Opsworks yet. So with this, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Sorry, I rushed toward the end. I hope that you will continue to enjoy the Tales of the Race. Thank you very much for your patronage and for your support. Thank you very much, Mr. Iwase. Due to time limitation, we will not be able to take questions from the floor through this presentation. If you have any questions, please approach him on an individual basis. Please give Mr. Iwase a big hand of applause once again.
Now, I would like to invite Mr. Yamaji Hiroyuki to the stage, and please give us a bit of time to prepare the stage for the next speech.